if that didn't happen. Okay. Uh, Welcome. This is 8.2, supporting diverse learners. Our goal today, create a complete culturally responsive learning package using AI that authentically supports diverse learners. Um, this one especially is hits home with me because I just got back from the ATD Dream Conference, and they talk a lot about this for the diverse learners out there, and how what we can do as faculty, what we can do as instructional designers to help uh, make the learning accessible for everyone. So, how we're going to do it today, analyze some course materials for cultural bias and representation gaps. We're going to generate inclusive, culturally responsive content using one structured AI prompt. And then we're going to revise and validate any materials for authenticity and academic rigor, which is also important. Um, so the reality here, ChatGPT and similar LLMs, chatbots can generate culturally adapted lessons, bias analyses, and inclusive examples in minutes. But is it good? That's the real question. Uh, um, this is one of my favorite slide covers that Notebook LM came up with. I just like how it comes in as one and then pops out and looks like some sort of textured material, cloth, which I think looks pretty good. Um, let's see. So I'm thinking we can go through this slide deck if you want. This was talking about so we've got strategies. Yeah, this has got a lot of good stuff in there. Um, but there's also the video, there's also the audio, and there's also these articles. So if you are looking for deeper engagement with the material, you can check those ones out. This one is culturally responsive generative AI use and training supports multilingual learning in public classrooms, leveraging generative AI for inclusive excellence, and colleges race to prepare students for the AI workplace. So I'll let you all choose one of those to look at, and then when we meet back, I'm gonna go around and ask everybody any key takeaways, not from the well, I'll ask which content you decided to interact with, and then what were your main takeaways? And that can be personally, professionally, anything like that. So is everybody cool with that? I'm gonna play this audio the from the podcast here, and then also the slides if you need. Because once again, these are Notebook LM flat image slides. This kind of explains what each of the slides have. That's there for the drop down. But everybody understands what we're doing here. I'm going to give you all some chance to get the knowledge on your own, and then we can come back and share out. Let me go ahead and make sure my sound is on. And I'll once again make one of those breakout rooms. So if you would like to go and work um, without a podcast going on in the background. We'll call this the quiet zone. And then I think I wonder if I can make another room, add a room. We'll call this the talking room or the chatting room. If you want to go and chat with somebody about stuff, go into the chatting room. Um, but keep it AI related. Okay, I'm gonna start this. I'm gonna turn myself off, and then we can listen to that.
Okay, picture this. You are sitting at your desk, maybe it's late, and you've got that third cup of coffee getting cold.
Yep.
You're reviewing a lesson plan or maybe a presentation deck that you have used, I don't know, a dozen times.
The old reliable?
Exactly. It's solid. The facts are there. The flow works. But then, for some reason, you start to look at it through a slightly different lens.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the stock photos you picked 3 years ago. You look at the real-world examples you use to explain a complex idea. And suddenly you just get this sinking feeling in your stomach.
That specific moment of realization where you just think, oh, no.
Oh, no. You realize everyone in the slide deck looks exactly the same. Or you realize that the real-world scenario you wrote only really applies to a very specific slice of the world.
A slice that looks a lot like you, but maybe not so much like the people sitting in your audience or your classroom.
Right. And it's a heavy realization. It's that gap between your intention, which is to teach everyone effectively, and the actual impact.
Which might be signaling to half the room, this isn't for you. You don't belong here.
Yes. And usually when that panic hits, the immediate thought is, I have to burn it all down.
Right. Start from scratch.
You think you need a PhD in sociology and like 6 months of free time to rewrite it all?
Yeah.
But that is exactly what we are tackling today. We're looking at a set of documents that claims you can bridge that gap.
And not by guessing and not by burning it down, but by using a very specific, almost tactical approach.
We are digging into session 8.2, supporting diverse learners.
Yeah.
And I have to say, right off the bat, looking at this source material, this does not look like your standard HR pamphlet.
Not at all. The vibe is really interesting.
I was going to say, usually when we talk about inclusive pedagogy, you use soft colors, pastel.
Be gentle, very safe.
This thing looks like a tactical mission briefing from, I don't know, a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
It's got this deep navy background, a flat monospace font like an old computer terminal.
It's very cyberpunk.
Totally. And the color coding is so strict. Got bright green for core data, this amber color for headers, and then my favorite part, bright flashing red for the warnings.
It feels like a blueprint for a special operation.
And I think that aesthetic has to be intentional. The source is framing cultural responsiveness not as some soft skill you sprinkle on top, but as a technical engineering problem.
A mission.
A mission. And the weapon for this mission is...
Yeah.
It's interesting. We aren't just talking about empathy. We're talking about a very structured application of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, this is the deep dive on the culturally responsive learning package. And the big promise here is pretty audacious.
It really is.
The documents claim that by using a specific mega prompt, and we will get into exactly what that monster is, you can transform a standard lesson plan into something that isn't just more inclusive, but academically harder, more rigorous.
That's the part that stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
Because the criticism you usually hear is that inclusive curricula means watering things down.
Right, the participation trophy argument.
Exactly. Making it easier so everyone feels good. But this source argues the exact opposite.
It flips the script completely. It argues that if your content isn't culturally responsive, it's actually too easy.
It's intellectually lazy.
Yes, because it relies on a single, narrow perspective. If you do this right, you are increasing the cognitive load. You're making the learning deeper.
So we have a diagnosis, a high-tech tool, and some serious ethical guardrails to get through. Where do we actually start the mission?
Well, like any good operation, you don't just start shooting. You do recon first. You have to start with what the source calls the inventory.
The diagnosis phase.
Right, and the source is really strict about this. You cannot redesign responsibly without first diagnosing the representation gaps.
So you can't just start throwing AI prompts at a wall.
No, you have to look at your material, that slide deck you've used for 5 years, and hunt for something it calls dominant narrative assumptions.
Dominant narrative assumptions. Okay, let's unpack that, because that sounds like the kind of academic jargon that makes people's eyes glaze over.
It does, but the concept is actually pretty grounded. It's when you present a specific, usually privileged experience as if it's the universal human default.
When you assume normal equals my life.
Exactly.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate. If I'm teaching, say, the Pythagorean theorem or the laws of thermodynamics, isn't the math just the math? How does the narrative get into that?
That's the trick. The math itself is neutral, sure, but the context you wrap it in rarely is. So let's take an example from the source. You're teaching basic finance. You need an example for budgeting. Your slide says, here is how you budget your monthly salary to save for a vacation.
Standard stuff. I've seen that slide 100 times.
Standard for whom? That example assumes a salaried income, not hourly gig work where you don't know what you're making next week.
Right.
It assumes a surplus of cash to save, not a robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario. It assumes banking access.
Ah, I see. So if you have a student who works 3 jobs, deals in cash, and supports their family, they look at that slide and...
They disconnect. It's friction. The example doesn't just feel not for them. It actively signals, this class is for people with salaries. You're in the wrong room.
And instead of thinking about the math, they're thinking about how they don't fit in.
Exactly. You've introduced cognitive load that has nothing to do with the actual subject. The inventory is about seeing those invisible barriers.
The source has a checklist for this. It asks whose history is highlighted, whose community is the example, and whose reality is being ignored.
And that missing voices part is key. It's not just about what is there that's bad, it's what isn't there.
So if every scientist you mention in a biology class is a European man from the 19th century,
you're implicitly teaching that science is a European male hobby, even if you never say it out loud. The silence speaks.
So step 1 is admitting you have a problem. You've scanned your lesson, you realize, wow, okay, this is pretty one-sided. But now what? Teachers are already drowning.
That's the bottleneck. The intent is there, the capacity isn't. And this is where the source pivots to the technology.
The mega prompt.
The mega prompt.
I love that name. It sounds like a weapon from an anime. Deploy the mega prompt. But looking at the text block in the source, it's massive.
Oh, yeah.
It is not just, hey, ChatGPT, make this diverse.
No, and that's a crucial distinction. If you just ask AI to make it diverse, you get stereotypes. You get surface level stuff.
Tokenism.
Right. This prompt is engineered. It has specific ingredients, almost like a recipe, to force the AI to do deep structural work.
Okay, let's break down those ingredients. The first section is context.
Right. You have to anchor the AI. Who are the students? What is the course? The source suggests being descriptive but broad, urban working class, diverse linguistic background. You have to tell the AI who's in the room.
Then it moves to cultural asset integration. This is the part I found really fascinating. It asks the AI to find diverse cultural knowledge systems.
Knowledge systems is a key phrase there. It's asking, how do other cultures solve this problem?
Can you give me an example of that?
Sure. Let's say you're teaching sustainability. The standard textbook might focus on modern Western recycling plants.
Mm-hmm.
But if you run this prompt, the AI might bring in indigenous land management practices or circular economy models from the global south. It expands the data set of the lesson.
So it's not removing the core concept. It's showing that the concept has been approached from 50 different angles throughout history.
Precisely. You're making it richer.
There's another ingredient here that I think is critical, socioeconomic realities. The prompt explicitly tells the AI to revise examples to reflect diverse socioeconomic realities.
That goes right back to our finance example. The AI might rewrite that word problem to be about managing fluctuating cash flow from a side hustle. The math is the same, the rigor is the same, but the application now resonates with the kid working Uber Eats on the weekends.
It also asks for student voice. It wants the AI to design discussion questions where students share their expertise.
This is a huge pedagogical shift. It moves away from the banking model, where I, the teacher, deposit facts into your brain, to a collaborative model. The AI is prompted to create questions that let a student connect a concept to their grandmother's cooking or their neighborhood architecture.
So the student becomes a source of authority in the room.
Which is incredibly empowering. And, back to that rigor argument, it makes the class more interesting. You get 30 different perspectives instead of 30 kids reciting the same textbook answer.
Okay, so the mega prompt sounds like magic. You paste it in, you place your lesson in, and boom, perfect inclusivity.
That's always a but.
The source material has these slides with bright red headers, warnings, accessible actions, and the biggest one is about tokenism versus integration.
This is the danger zone. You have to remember, AI is a pattern matching machine. It doesn't understand culture, it just predicts text.
So if you aren't careful, it will give you tokenism.
It absolutely will. Tokenism is finding and replacing John with Mateo in a word problem, but leaving Mateo playing golf at the country club.
Right. It's just cosmetic. It's decoration.
It looks diverse, but it doesn't actually engage with a different reality. And the source warns that AI is excellent at being lazy. It's the path of least resistance.
So how do we stop it? The source lists guardrails.
The first guardrail is data provenance, which is a fancy way of saying fact check the story.
Because the AI hallucinates.
Constantly. It might invent a cultural tradition that sounds plausible but just doesn't exist. And imagine the damage that does.
The old nightmare scenario. You stand up in front of the class, present this diverse fact, and a student from that culture says, that's not true.
Exactly. The source is very clear. The AI is the drafter, not the fact checker. You are the editor-in-chief. You have to verify.
There's also a guardrail about privacy. Seems obvious, but maybe it isn't.
Never paste student names or identifiable stories into a public LLM. The prompt tells you to use general demographics. Students from XYZ neighborhood, not Jenny from Block 4.
I want to circle back to the rigor argument, because the source hits this hard in the guardrail section. It says, ensure integration enhances academic rigor, not decoration.
This is my favorite argument in the whole deep dive. There's this myth that inclusion means making it easier. The source argues that if you do this right, you are increasing the cognitive complexity.
How so?
Well, think about history, which is harder. Memorizing a single date like 1492,
Easy.
or analyzing the arrival of Columbus from the perspective of the Spanish crown and the Taino people, and then synthesizing why those two groups experienced the same event so differently.
The second one, obviously. It requires way more brain power.
Right. It requires critical thinking, empathy, comparative analysis. When you bring in diverse perspectives, you are forcing students to grapple with complexity.
You're preparing them for a complex world.
Exactly. So if an administrator says, why are you bringing all this cultural stuff into a physics class? The answer isn't just, it's the right thing to do.
The answer is, it makes the physics better.
It makes the students better thinkers. That's the winning argument.
Okay, let's move to the output. We've diagnosed the problem, we've run the mega prompt, we've applied the guardrails. What do we actually walk away with?
The culturally responsive learning package. It sounds like a product you'd buy, but it's really just a transformed lesson plan.
So what does it look like compared to the old one?
For one, the diversity isn't a sidebar. It's woven all the way through. The examples, the images, the questions. But more importantly, the assessment has usually changed.
Right, like the varied assessment options. The prompt specifically asks for that.
And this is huge. The package doesn't just ask for a 500-word essay every time. It offers choices, a debate, a diagram, a community interview.
Because if the goal is to check if they understand the concept, the format shouldn't matter as much.
Exactly. It recognizes that writing well in academic English is not always the same thing as understanding the concept. Varied assessment fixes that.
There's one final piece of the package, validation sources. It asks you to recommend community or scholarly validation.
That circles right back to the hallucinations. The blueprint says, okay, the AI gave you this great idea about Islamic geometry. Now go find a scholar who verifies it.
So the AI breaks the blank page problem. It gives you the idea, but the human connects it to truth.
The AI is the sketch. Human validation is the ink. You need both.
Now, before we wrap, we have to talk about the gamification, because this whole thing has an XP system.
All right, I'm gonna stop it there because I think it's gonna get into something that I think it was explaining a different slide deck. So hold on just one second. Okay. All right, so I think you guys were all listening to the podcast, or did anybody go through the slides or mute this and somehow listen to this? Which way did you do this, David?
I was just listening to your podcast.
To the podcast?
Yeah.
Any takeaways from you or from the podcast for you?
Actually, I have to admit I was dual working.
That's fine. That's the problem with AI.
Well, yeah, our network went down earlier today, and there was an email that came in that was a rush. It was like, oh shit, I didn't see. Oh, see, there's that takeaway. Don't say bad things.
I'll just edit that out. So I think we had a also internet thing, Kelly. I feel like I got something
I
yesterday
think it
about.
might have been a Microsoft issue.
It
Okay.
was Outlook. Yeah, it was Office 365, Outlook, Microsoft, and a whole bunch of other people getting DDoSed. Fun.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
attack?
Um Attempted, considering
Attempted.
what's going on in the world today. They're going after .edu domains, trying to cause a disruption and steal research and other fun stuff.
Wow.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I've been busy.
Kelly's been busy. Um, Kelly, did you have any takeaways from the content that you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Looking at, like, you know, the professional environment and hidden bias in course materials, making assumptions. Like, one of the things we're really pushing is women in IT. And some of the curriculum written doesn't really acknowledge that, or
Mhm.
some of the yeah, I see a lot of he's and him and his stuff posted still. So, that's
Mhm.
kind of one of the biases. And
Okay.
then also having, diverse representations from different cultures is really important. I don't see
Mhm.
that a lot in AI. It's not that it's not needed. I find myself having to watch it when I'm using AI for assignments, for classwork, stuff like that.
To do a quick check here. So if I were to say, um,
And
uh,
okay, think about what, like with Ramadan coming up, right? Or with Ramadan here, right? Um, that was another thing to think about, was in the classroom. And so when creating, uh, here's an example. I had an assignment made, and I have been dealing with a lot because I also work at a data center. And during the daytime, um, it has been slower, but at night, like, we're getting hit from 100 directions, right? Attempted intrusions constantly, attempted takedowns. And then AI is referencing the other side of the globe, which would be daytime there and nighttime here, as if, people are doing this during a cultural significant time in their lives. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
And I'm having to, like, go, oh, I need this, I need to cut this out real quick, because I don't,
Mm,
you know what I mean? I don't want my students, because I don't want any students who believe that, or feel that, to be affected in a negative way or live that, right?
Hmm.
If their culture is they acknowledge Ramadan, then I do not want them singled out. I do not want a negative, income. I just don't want it to be negatively pointed towards them. So I'm
Yeah,
having
sure.
to make adjustments. And I'm trying to be careful how I say it right now to you guys. Think about the students.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what we have to do. What do you think about this one, Kelly, with the NOS, the National Organization for Student Success?
Um, they stole our acronym.
No, this is
And
I
it's
said
all
make a picture
women.
a
I know,
group
but
of NOS students in the classroom.
right.
No, no, no. I think it's pretty mixed. You
It is mixed, but the reality is not, unfortunately, right now, the reality is not that. We want
Oh
it to
well,
be
I
that.
think that's because I think that's because they're making this
That's cool
they
though.
made up NOS. What's NOS is
Network
network
operations and system security.
system security.
Yeah. You threw me
All
off
right.
for a second. They stole our
This is
acronym.
this one it
No,
will
that's
be a good
great.
comparison to see if anything changes
Yep.
from these two. So okay, thank you Kelly, and then
Yeah.
Derek, did you have any takeaways?
Yeah, this is the first time I think that I listened to the podcast, and it was interesting, I think, for me, just because like it was definitely very podcast conversational, right? So that was interesting in a different way.
Hmm.
And I'm not quite sure that I like it personally. Like I like podcasts, but for learning, I don't know that I like it, right? But that
Hmm.
aside, I think talking about making sure that you have examples that represent your students, right? And
Hmm.
represent the diversity in your classroom, and um, and they talk through the example with like a finance class, right? And I
Mm.
found it interesting that they were talking about the um, like uh, yeah, and see, I'm not as in tune with it. So, the the work for like sort of like Uber or Uber Eats, those type of gig workers. That's it, gig workers type of
Hmm. Oh
workers,
yeah.
right? And you know, having that representation there, and it's like that's great, but I think that's true, but I think we you also want to have, not just one example, right? If you're just using one
Hmm.
example in your class, um then if you're just using the gig worker example, then you're singling out students that are in a more like traditional, like part-time
Mm.
job, right? Where they're, paycheck, right, type of job. Um, so having both examples is the best thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
Different perspectives. And I wrote down also something similar, like uh having the student you get the perspectives from all the students in the classroom. That's going to give you it's going to be much more rigorous um and realistic, I would say. If you've got your students giving their lived experiences as opposed to just using whatever you've been using or whatever the textbook came up with however long ago. Um, and I really I wrote down that you know uh, it might be like, oh, well, where am I going to put this in? Like I remember when I was talking about inclusive syllabi, or I don't know, maybe inclusive assignments, and one of our faculty members was like, "Oh, well, I teach I teach this course," and I'm not gonna put that person on blast, but they're like, "I teach this course, and like." there's no really chance for me to put in any diversity because it's, we're just learning like formulas and um, they talked about the math example, like the Pythagorean theorem. How do you make the Pythagorean theorem diverse? But it's not like the math is the standard, I think is what it said, but the context is what can be adjusted. And so an example of when somebody would need to use the Pythagorean theorem, like that's where you can um, introduce some diverse examples to help, your diverse learners feel um, more seen, more heard. Kelly?
I had and please take this as it is, um what I'm about to say. I had a situation where I was teaching straight out of a textbook, computer hardware. And back in the day when we used what's called IDE drives, they were older technology, big fat ribbon cables. And when you would install those, you would set them up with the jumper that said master, the primary, or slave, the secondary. And I had a student immediately raise their hand and say, I am offended by that. And I knew, and I felt terrible. Even though it's a standard at the time, it bothered him. I never ever referred to it that way again. I referred to it as primary and secondary or first and
Mm,
second drive. We changed it across the whole team did. We all did because it
nice.
was, you know what I mean? It bothered one student, and that's all it took for us to change the context. And the I even contacted the publisher and said, you may want to think about this. Um,
Nice. Wow. Yeah,
Eventually
that's
they got rid of the technology, so that was good.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
And
definitely had similar experiences. Like, in science, like science usually doesn't change unless new science comes out, but like scientific names change and we have different common names for species and stuff like that. And what I do in those situations, for instance, um, there's a moth and an invasive moth species that growing up in Pennsylvania, I was aware of it, and it was just always the gypsy moth to us. But there's a um, you know negative connotation as it relates to using the word gypsy in the name. So the common name, the scientific name, doesn't refer to that at all, but the common name did. So now it's the spongy moth. And what I do
Mm,
is I say to students, it's the spongy moth, but you may see, because there's still documentation that's still very relevant, but it's older, and it will still refer to it as the gypsy moth. So
mm,
I think and it's all context dependent. So in Kelly's example, it's the terminology is no longer relevant, so he doesn't have to work. They don't have to worry about it as much. But in my case, that like you'll still have documentation that refers to the gypsy moth, doesn't makes no mention of the spongy moth because it's a recent change. So
mm.
I let students know when, and explain why that change was made, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, nice. And that brings up the conversation and lets the other people that maybe didn't know about that gypsy was or gyp or gypsy was has that negative connotation. So
right, exactly. And yeah, it's something that I didn't even think about, right? For me
hmm
personally, right? Um,
that's right.
and then I saw the name change. I'm like, what's going on here? And I did a little, bit of digging and saw the explanation. I'm like, okay. So yeah.
Nice. Great job. Kelly?
yeah, one of my colleagues told me recently, this is what brought this to mind, is that they were looking up, a student had asked a question because we allow students to bring in, like, if they have an old computer and they want to tear it apart, see if they can get it working, whatever, they're allowed to do so. and evidently it had IDE drives in it, and the student asked the instructor, and the instructor said, well, let's look it up. And the kid got on AI and asked it, and AI was still referencing it as the old, the old terminology that
Yeah.
and what do you know what I mean? It's because it's doesn't make it right, but it's there.
Oh,
Um,
oh yeah. So that's actually a good segue to what we can do down here with this monster prompt that they were saying. It doesn't look too monstrous to me, but having the AI kind of check itself. And so we're gonna move into this, but I do want to give Tarla Chan and Alyssa a chance if y'all have anything else that you would like to add to this conversation based on the material that you uh, learned from.
I watched the video and I think there could have been more. There was just a teeny tiny bit of it at the end, but I think it needs to go full circle and have the students evaluate it,
Hmm.
right? You need to get feedback from
Evaluate
your
the
class.
response from the AI.
Yeah, because just because the teacher doesn't know and AI doesn't know, I mean, if the teacher doesn't know enough to educate AI about what it wants or to look for bias, you might still be bringing in biased and inappropriate things because you're not
Hmm.
part of that culture or that group. So, how could you
Right.
ever really know? So, I think if it was me doing this, I would probably do a couple versions of each thing and take it to the class and say, what do you think of these?
Oh,
How could I make these more relevant to you? Do you feel there's bias in this? And then that gives a lot of room to have a really great conversation. And that would help the teacher learn. And it would also help
yeah.
the students feel more heard and understood. And then I mean, because I think there's still a chance to introduce biased materials. I mean,
Hmm.
just because AI says it's not biased, that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. So,
Very
who's going to
true.
be able to tell us the most? You got to get the feedback from the people that it affects. That's your students.
I
That's just
think
my
there's
opinion.
something in that. No, yeah, I love that. And I'm wondering if then you have those options that you give them that can start a conversation like on bias in AI. So like
Yeah.
that could lead into that, and that's kind of technology literacy. That that's one of our
Yeah.
CWLOs, college-wide learning outcomes is technology literacy, critical thinking. It's another one. Um, I mean, yeah, just kind of having that conversation hits just right off the bat two of our think communication. I guess it's like it sounds like all of them, but and then what I was thinking would be really cool would be all of those changes, like if they choose, which one's the best, and they look at that and they say, oh, you should change it like this, or you should include this, then you can use that as the, whatever you're going to teach. If you're going to teach that same course again next year, you can use that as the source material and say like this was, vetted or like co-created with the last class, and then that cycle can repeat every quarter, every semester. It's like, okay, let's look at this. Are there any voices that are missing here? Like when you read this or when you see this, like how does that make you feel? And hopefully, like majority of the time, everybody's like, no, it's good. But it is those, one or two students where it's like you don't know about it, right? As Derek and Kelly were saying, like I didn't know about this, but now, like I think giving the students the space, um, and saying like, it's okay, you can critique this, um, and that also gives them ownership over the
Yeah.
material
The
and
co-creation piece gives it more relevance and meaning, knowing that their voice is going to be heard by the next class. So
yes.
I think it just adds another layer that is needed here. I don't think we can rely on AI to do that for us.
Yeah, or we shouldn't. Yeah, nice. Okay. That was great. Okay, now let's move on down to the explore here. We've got about 10 minutes until the hour. I'm gonna probably have to stick around a little bit longer just to get through this, since there were some hiccups at the beginning. Okay, so here's the AI-powered cultural responsiveness transformation. We're going to select a lesson, assignment, or module that reflects limited cultural perspectives. We're going to identify the cultural assumptions, missing voices, and biased examples in the material. Paste the material into ChatGPT using the mega prompt below. We're going to review the revisions for authenticity, accuracy, and alignment with the learning objectives. Refine the content, get rid of any tokenism, and strengthen the meaningful integration. And then we're going to save the response version as the submission. So I'm going to go ahead and open up ChatGPT and take this monster prompt and put it into the chat. Nope, it's too long for the chat. So see if I can maybe cut off back half. So we'll just cut off student voice. And we'll put that one in there for y'all. Okay, so take this one. Does anybody have an assignment that you would like to toss in here? Maybe your most responsive, culturally responsive assignment to see if there's anything missing, or if there's maybe an assignment that you feel needs a little bit more culturally responsiveness in it. And is there a new chat? 4.5 or 5.4? Does anybody know about 5.4?
Yeah,
Felt
it's
like the
new.
last thing I saw was
Yep.
5.2.
Five
Okay.
four. 5.4 is the new one. Yeah. It's
Okay.
the one I've been using.
Let's see if that
It's supposed to think longer for better answers, by the way.
okay. Well, I've got thinking on, so actually I might have to turn that off because it's just gonna take too long. Uh
Crash your computer, right?
uh crash my GPT chat G what maybe we can workshop this together. Course, does anybody have a course that they want to audit? I guess this would be like similar to like auditing an assignment. If not, I'm going to do my technology literacy class because I don't think that what I'm teaching really has a lot of diverse perspectives in it because it's not very like it's really focused on the practical. And so like, what to do, steps to do. Um, so let me see if I can find an assignment. Actually, this is one that I just did today. So this is called, here's an assignment that I do with my technology literacy uh, course. This one's about finding community resources online. So I'm gonna see what it says about this one. Now, in my class, I have ESL, mostly ESL students from Mexico, Afghanistan, who else is in there? Japan and Philippines. And then the learning objective here, I'm gonna just type in the goal and the current materials. So I'm just gonna copy all of this and then toss it in here and see what it comes up with. Feel free to work on your own if you'd like, or if you would like to just see what this comes up with, we can go over it together. So revise and strengthen version of the lesson that integrates cultural assets, reduce bias, and creates space for student voice while keeping the original learning objective and structure intact. See, that was something they said in the podcast that I thought was kind of funny. It was like, oh, you got to make it more culturally responsive. So, I mean, I got to burn it all down and get a sociology degree. They're like, no, you don't have to do that. You can use AI here to at least start the work, um, and help to identify any of your blind spots. Okay, so let me see here. I'm actually gonna put this next to the other one. Where'd the other one go? Just open it again. Okay, we'll put these guys next to each other. So block 29, finding community creative resources. Okay, just adding in extra words, it's fine. Find local creative resources is good. Why this matters. Oh. Oh, free or low cost creative programs. This one here says offer free creative programs. Okay, that's the same. Many communities share knowledge through workshops, cultural programs, and skill sharing events. I like this because it's a little bit more specific and calls out cultural programs. Searching online helps us discover. Okay. Changed a little bit. Oh, why this matters. And then it goes here. Creative knowledge exists in many communities. Creativity is not found in formal schools. Many cultures pass knowledge through community spaces. Public libraries often host art classes. Oh, so this was a little bit more of a deeper dive. Here's really tight um, the explanation, and this one here is saying because my students actually when I ran this today, they didn't know what a makerspace was. So I just had to say, like it's a place where you can go to make stuff. I said it's a space where you can go to make things. But here, adding this in to the, you know, main page, support building, designing, and inventing with tools. This is more specific. Ooh, I like this. And then going to give examples of community-based creativity. Piccato. Okay. See, like this would be cool if I would have had this in there today, then this would be a great conversation that I could have with the students. Be like, so AI said that in Filipino community groups organize dance and cultural arts programs. Then I would ask my Filipino student, "Do is this correct?" And they'd be, "Yeah, it's great. That's what I always love to do in the Philippines is dance in a community group, but didn't get the chance." So, okay, this one, these are all just steps, so I don't think, let me see here. It gives examples. Okay. Community center, look for examples of creative programs. Community centers sometimes offer programs designed for immigrants. Calling that out. Okay. And then let me see here. The homework for this one is choose one resource to contact. Oh, and it kind of tightened that up. I like that actually. So I feel like it didn't really change a lot. There were a couple of examples that it added in, but that's a very good point. Alyssa in the chat says, be careful relying on a single student's perspective to represent the perspectives of the entire groups. Um, let's see here. So this one's got a reflection, an optional discussion. Think about the creativity in your own community or culture. What creative skills or traditions exist? Where do people learn those skills? Are there community places where people share knowledge? It's pretty good. Okay, so now I'm realizing I didn't even go through what the prompt is supposed to look for, so maybe we should focus on that first. Um, so cultural asset integration, bias detection and mitigation, and then student voice and authentic representation, and there's the list there. So is that everything? So okay. We did the reflection. So adding in the reflection for the student voice aspect of it. Cultural awareness check. Some programs might be advertised. Some communities share information through word of mouth. Yeah. Social media, someone was telling me they get their information from Facebook events. And this one, libraries and community centers offer programs for immigrants. I do a Saturday morning class at the Puyallup Library where I meet immigrants from Ukraine and Afghanistan and Mexico. We do ESL there. So, instructor notes, key improvements, avoids assumption that creativity only comes from formal institutions, includes examples from multiple cultures without stereotyping, acknowledges social economical realities with the free programs and phone access. Actually, that was one of the things. Let me see if I can bring up what they were working on today. Um, and I think I can use it as an example of, what hold on, let me see. I think it's in here. So I'm gonna try to find it real quick while I'm talking. But the I think it was maybe the n next assignment or maybe the last assignment here, where they had to work together and put the uh, the resources into a document. Uh, and what was it? Resources. They were working together. I was trying to teach them how to work together inside of Canva, and I had them put together a document of here, a creative project. And so what they can what would they want to work together with their other classmates on? And the first one here, low cost classes and scholarships available by subject at Clover Park. So that is, that's very important to the students, and making sure to, call that out. That's one way. This is the assignment. That's one way that you can make it more accessible for people. So, okay, I think I'm actually going to end it there. I mean, there's some more fine tuning that I can do to this, but I don't know. I kind of like how my assignment is, and I like that it fits on 2 pages. So, I may add in that reflection, and it might be something where it's just maybe I don't add it in directly into the assignment, but maybe it's something that we just have as a conversation. And if it is something that, you know, we're talking at our college about how to assess college-wide learning outcomes, and if this falls in one of those things, then uh, if it falls under one of the outcomes, then how can we assess it? And if it was like that, then I would have a reflection where they would actually like fill it in, and I can go through and say, okay, they understand this aspect of this outcome. So okay, any questions before we end this one? Any questions or comments? Did anybody try the prompt with one of their assignments? Or y'all just waiting for the apply?
And also, just real quick, on the cultural awareness, one of the things, not just relying on resources available on the internet here, but also maybe going back and asking AI go back and maybe reference some of the native countries' educational libraries, right? See what they think about those
Mm,
norms so they can pull the real data from there, that as a source.
I like that.
Yeah,
International sources is great.
yeah,
It's important, the perspective, right?
that's right.
Okay. Well, I think that's good. I think that's a nice place to end it. I want to thank y'all for coming in and being patient with me at the beginning. And we will continue next week with 9.1.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Thanks, Ronald. Have a good one, bud.
Yep. See y'all next time.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye.